everybody. Welcome to the Great Reset podcast where insurance meets accountability. Today I have a special guest, O.D. Johnson from UC Davis Law School, and most importantly, my amazing father-in-law. Today he's going to help me out and ask some questions based off of the podcast that we've had and some of the concerns that came up. So no further ado, here we go. You ready?
I'm ready to go. I'm currently not giving any legal advice, and I'm on inactive status with the California Bar, but I am a law professor and have been a law professor for a number of years.
Thank you, Dad. Alrighty, so first question. In previous episodes, we've heard agents facing challenges with unclear or misleading contracts. From a legal perspective, what are some key elements agents to look for in their contracts to ensure they are fully protected, especially regarding commissions and performance expectations?
Well, I think it's very basic but very important that before signing any contract, you read the contract and make sure you have a good understanding of that contract. If you need advice in understanding the contract, make sure you get that advice. Lawyers can be of help in providing advice on contracts and what they mean. Now, one critical provision of a contract to pay attention to is the provision that deals with disputes under the contract. Dispute resolution clauses sometimes will say that all disputes under this contract have to go to arbitration and go through an arbitrator, and that's a private service that may be fast and may be very efficient, but is something very different than a dispute that's resolved in a court of law. Sometimes disputes under contracts can be brought in courts. That has the benefit of having the government involved in enforcing the contract, interpreting the contract, and it also has some costs at times in delays in getting disputes resolved. But it's very important to know at the outset, if you have a dispute over the contract, over commissions, over anything, any performance expectations or the like, that how disputes are resolved in a contract are critically important. And many times, in many contracts, for example, a very basic contract like buying a ticket on the airlines, there are dispute resolution clauses that we often don't know about, but agree to by buying the ticket. Or signing the form. There's all kinds of dispute resolution contracts in any loan agreement, for example. And that is a very important thing to pay attention to.
No, thank you so much for that well thought answer. And that's some things that we don't take in consideration, especially when it comes to commissions. If you hire an agent, you are automatically collateral based on your contract. And most of us don't know that you are on the hook for any business that they write until it gets out of that grace period. So my next question, you may have touched on it a little bit, but when things go wrong, agents often feel powerless. What are some legal options available for resolving disputes over things like the commission payments, contract violations, or agency mistreatment? How can agents prepare for these situations in advance?
Well, I think the thing that's most important is to know how disputes are resolved under your contract. Now, there's some things that may arise in a relationship that are separate and apart from the contract. For example, discriminatory treatment or sexual harassment or things like that. They may be actionable in a court of law without necessarily going through the dispute resolution provisions of the contract. I do think it's important to you don't want to anticipate disputes before you enter into an arrangement, but always be aware that you may have to defend your rights, you may have to protect yourself. I do think it's often the best case to try to resolve these disputes informally by raising them with the other side of the agreement, to try to resolve them quickly and efficiently and amicably. You want to go to arbitration, for example, or to court, for example, really as a last resort, because it tends to end the relationship in many instances, and often doesn't breed friendliness and cooperation in the future.
Yeah, thank you. And we've seen a lot of that so far. And so our last question, because we know your time is so valuable, so I do appreciate you. So a lot of times in this industry, agents experience recruiters enticing them with promises that aren't always fulfilled legally. How can agents protect themselves against false promises during the recruitment process? And what should they insist on having in writing before making that commitment?
Well, I think that recruiters, their job is recruiting and getting new talent, and there's nothing the matter with that. But what's really important in these kinds of relationships is what's in writing and what is owed to you and what you owe. And so I would not assume necessarily that anything that's not in writing is anything that you're going to get in the operation of the contract. So if there's a provision or an issue that's important to you, you have to make sure it's in the contract so that you can enforce it at some point. If it's not in the contract, the other side can always say it's not in the contract, and there's no obligation. So I don't want to put recruiters in a bad light, but really in the end, what is the law between the parties is what's in the contract.
No, that is beautiful. Thank you so much. And like I've said before, if it's not in writing, it did not happen. Again, thank you so much, Dean Johnson, aka Dad, for coming on to the podcast, the Great Reset podcast for insurance meets accountability. We'll see you guys next time.
Take care. Thanks.
Thanks.